I'm here with Mike Nilson. Thank you for joining me, Mike, to talk about your career and amongst other things being part of Gonzaga.
Thank you so much for having me.
So after more than 2 decades as the head strength and conditioning coach for Gonzaga's women's basketball, you've decided now to transition into a new chapter. What led to that decision, and what can you share about what's next for you?
Well, I absolutely loved being a strength coach. I loved being a nutritionist. Working with athletes has been amazing. And what I found out is that in addition to actually the strength conditioning and the nutrition, I actually just love coaching. And so, especially these past 5 years, I've noticed athletes with the NIL era getting more and more money, but not knowing necessarily what to do with it. And a lot of money could be a curse if it comes all at once. I heard a story about an athlete. One of my friends is a coach in a Big 12 school, and they received a lot of money. They bought their mom a house, they bought 2 cars. The money's all gone, and they never paid taxes. And I thought, man, there needs to be people that are looking out for athletes, just like we look out for them on the nutrition and the strength conditioning side. I've always had a passion for managing money. When I first became a strength conditioning coach, I was so excited. I got the part-time assistant strength coach job here, working 20 hours a week. And one of the boosters said, "Congratulations. Now what are you gonna do to make money?" And I never thought about it. You know, as a part-time strength coach, you don't make very much money. And so I decided, well, instead of giving up my passion and making money, what if I did strength conditioning and then did other things to support it? And so 21 years ago, with a couple partners, we built U-District Physical Therapy. And that's just been an amazing ride to be able to take it from one location and just 4 people to over 60 employees. I got really into real estate. And so owned a lot of property here in the Gonzaga area. And so I found ways to be able to support my love of strength and conditioning through building wealth. And now, as I'm getting a little older, got the gray hair, I thought what a great time to be able to transition, and instead of coaching athletes in nutrition, if I could coach them in their finances, helping them build budgets, helping them build investing plans, and just supporting them for life after basketball.
And even as you step away from this day-to-day role in strength and conditioning, will you still have a presence around Gonzaga basketball in the sense maybe of this helping on the financial side with student athletes, or is there other spaces that you still hope to be involved with, mentoring, helping coach in some other aspect, or just cheering from the sidelines?
All the above. They're gonna have to drag me out of here kicking and screaming. When I approached the athletic director, I approached the basketball coaches here, and last summer letting them know this was gonna be my last season at Gonzaga. And there was a lot of tears. When I first told my wife, she cried. I told my younger son, Memphis, that I was leaving Gonzaga, and he cried. And so I knew that I couldn't leave for good, and I couldn't leave in a full capacity. So when I met with the coaches and the athletic director, I begged them, is there any way I could still be involved? And they have been amazing. And of course, we have our new basketball strength conditioning coach, JP Batista, who's not just a friend and a colleague, but one of my mentors just of life. I mean, he has just lived strength conditioning. He's lived nutrition for over 20 years. I mean, he is just like the pro. And so I still want to be a resource to him. I want to be a colleague and help out where I can. I've always been passionate about the leadership side, the mental performance side. And so I begged Lisa, hey, can I give a couple talks throughout the year? And she's been super gracious about allowing me to be on. Matter of fact, the athletic department hired me on as a volunteer assistant coach, and which means that I get to still be around all the ladies, all the guys. I mean, this program, I've been here since I was 18 years old. I met my wife here. Really, most of the beautiful, great things in my life came from Gonzaga. And so the idea of stepping out the doors and not coming back was not an option. The only way I was going to transition into my new role as a financial advisor was if I still could be on some kind of capacity around the athletic department, around the athletes, around the coaches, because they just make my life so much better. So yes, I'll be cheering on from the stands. I'll be cheering them on from the weight room when I get my own workouts in. And hopefully if people need some kind of advice or guidance, I'd be a trusted mentor for them.
So circling back to, you mentioned your successor now, JP Batista, and you said how he's lived through good fitness and strength and conditioning. What other qualities have you seen or do you see in him that make him just a strong fit for this position he's stepping into?
Yeah, JP is the perfect person for this role. I was lucky enough, I was his strength coach back when he was in college, and he taught me so much about discipline, about hard work, and about leadership. And so one of the things I'm most excited about that I left behind here was a leadership program that we helped develop with all the coaches. And we have 3 levels of leaders. We have 3 levels of leadership. And level 1 is your ability to connect with other people. And I always give the example of Andrew Sorensen, who was a walk-on here. But after 3 years of not getting any playing time, Coach Few gives him a full ride scholarship because of his ability to connect with people. And so that's the first level of leadership. And when I talk about the second level of leadership, which is leading by example, JP Batista is always my example. And to be able to do that, you can't just work hard. First, you have to be a level 1 leader. And his ability to make connections with people is just unbelievable because I think he's so sincere. His heart is just so big. You can just see it when he walks into a room. And so I think that combination of care and humility and kindness coupled with this just gritty, tough work ethic, he's just modeled how to be a great leader for the last 20 plus years. And so now as a strength conditioning coach, he already knows how to bench, squat, clean. I mean, he's done that. And those kind of things you can learn in a book. But I think what JP's done and what he's going to bring to these athletes are the things that you can't do in a day or a week or a year. It's just a lifetime of discipline and really just paying attention to the details, doing things the right way. And so once again, I call him a colleague, but really he is a mentor to me because, as a 48-year-old, I still want to be able to feel good, perform well, look good. And I look to him and I think, man, if I could just be like JP, I'm going to be in good shape.
Speaking about JP, he mentioned you as well in an interview we did with him and Travis Knight and how instrumental you both were in helping shape his understanding of strength and conditioning. In your time here, starting as an assistant with your 20 hours a week, you've been able to collaborate with Travis amongst the coaches. How awesome has it been building up that strength and conditioning culture within Gonzaga athletics?
Well, Gonzaga is really a family. When I think about Travis Knight, we've been together for almost 30 years. We were freshmen together. He played baseball, I played basketball, and my claim to fame was I used to cut his hair. He'd pay me $5, I'd fade it up, and his hair doesn't look quite as good now. He's got another barber doing it, but when we have that kind of history, it's not just about the work, it's about the relationships and the friendship. So my business, U District Physical Therapy, we got the contract to train all the athletes here at GU, which meant that I got to bring on some great strength coaches. And Travis Knight was actually my first phone call. I knew I wanted someone, at the time I was training men's basketball, and I needed someone really good to be able to step in and be able to take over the reins. And so I called Travis up and I said, hey, are you in? Come alongside me, I'll train women's basketball, you could train men's basketball, and the rest is history. And it's been a great relationship, just like JP Batista as a mentor. I would consider Travis Knight a mentor because my personality is very linear, very logical. I love the idea if you know exactly where you are now and exactly where you want to go, it's like maps. You can find that direct path. And so that's how I've lived my life. I love the idea of anchoring to principles. I love systems. And Travis, he is a circular thinker. And I don't always understand how he gets to the place, but I just love his creativity. I love the freedom that he brings to the weight room. So I've really tried to be able to kind of move in that direction and be able to take my logical thought process and be able to pair it with sometimes just trusting your gut and your intuition. So I think the combination of us two as the anchors has been really cool to be able to build a really well-rounded strength and conditioning program. We've had people that have come and gone over the years that have really collaborated and built it. Nick Carlone's a longtime strength coach that's been with me for almost 20 years. So it's been fun to be able to see everyone bring their own personality and their unique take on things to be able to build out something really good for the athletes.
And with that experience of working alongside Travis amongst others, now that JP's stepping into this role, is there anything that you gave to him in terms of advice? I know you just said he's been a mentor to you as well, but specific advice that you think will be beneficial for him to carry into this position at the beginning especially?
Well, being the linear, logical thinker, the biggest advice I gave him would be is think in terms of systems. And I love the idea that 3 is a magic number on planet Earth. The tripod is the most stable structure. If you take away one leg, it's no longer stable. If you add a 4th leg, you're adding complexity without adding equal value. And so one of the most helpful things I did early on in my career is I started thinking about, man, what's my take on nutrition? And if I truly understand nutrition, I should be able to break it down into its 3 simplest form of complexity parts. If I truly understand leadership, I should be able to break it down into its 3 parts. And so when I talked to JP about, what would be one thing that would be helpful would be is define your strength conditioning philosophy. How do you see things? So when you get lost in the weeds and you have people saying the research says this, and then this other study says something different, and you see another strength coach that does something really cool on social media that might make you feel like, man, am I behind the curve? You can always go back to that anchor, because I think what JP has done is he has all of those other things. He has the life experience, he has the personality, he has the work ethic. And I think if you can take all of those things and be able to build it into a system and a structure that is really simple, that you can build out, I think the sky's the limit for him.
So you've been a part of this women's basketball program or in Gonzaga athletics since 2004, starting with Kelly Graves and continuing through Lisa Fortier's leadership since 2014. What has it meant to you to witness and be part of a program that's maintained such a high standard of excellence under 2 different coaches?
Yeah, it just shows you that Gonzaga is way bigger than one person. One of my mentors when I first came on was Steve DeLong, and he was a longtime athletic trainer and just like a rocky strength and conditioning coach type guy. And he always said, hey, Mike, we love you, you're so great. But if you leave, you'll be replaced. And at first that kind of hurt my feelings, but I think now looking back, there's so much wisdom in it because it's not about me. And I have left the strength conditioning field, but there's someone else to be able to come in, and that's how Gonzaga's done it. So when I think back to Kelly Graves, I always tell people my first year as strength coach for the women's basketball team, we were 0-14. That is painful. I was right alongside Kelly. That whole staff was awesome. But 4 years later, they were 14-0. And it was not because of me, but I think it was those systems. It was the heart of Gonzaga. It was, how do you do those small things that compound over time into something great? And that's been really fun. In my new work as a financial advisor, you see the power of compounding. That's what you want to teach. But I really first learned that in strength conditioning. You don't get stronger on the squat rack in one day. It's those small little deposits you make. And after a week, you're sore and you feel like, is this really worth it, But you just fast forward a year, especially here, we get to see athletes for 4 and 5 years. And you could see those small little efforts pay off. And so I saw Kelly Graves did it, although to go 0-14 to 14-0 in the span of 4 or 5 years, that's pretty fast progress. But still, it wasn't done in a day. And then now you see Lisa and her staff. I mean, they're just amazing people. And as a strength conditioning coach, I got to go behind the scenes and be there, not just for the film sessions, but for all the leadership talks and be in the locker room. And they really developed the whole person. It's not just like the skill of shooting, dribbling, passing. It's the skill of gratitude. It's the skill of enthusiasm. It's the skill of grit and growth mindset. And I think when you look at the person as a whole and you can just get 1% better in all those little areas, they add up something great over the course of 20 years. And so, I'm not surprised that they've had all this success. It still surprises me though, how they do it with such grace and they do it with such a family environment.
You and Coach Lisa both began your coaching careers at the same time back in 2004. Over the years, you've had a front row seat to her rise to head coach. What has it been like to be part of that journey with her? And in your eyes, what qualities have made her such an exceptional leader for this program?
Yeah, I'm in awe of her. Even before the adversity of going through the cancer and chemo and radiation, I was in awe of her because she's so down to earth and so real. She is the first person to make fun of herself. She's the first person to say, I'm not exactly sure how we're gonna get through this, but we're gonna get through it. And I think a lot of people in her position would put on a front and pretend like they have everything put together and they have all the answers. And I think the reason why she's been so successful is she admits she doesn't have all the answers, but she's gonna figure it out. She's one of the toughest human beings I know, and she's also one of the most sensitive. She was probably the person I had the hardest time telling that I was going to be making the transition. You know, I got to sit down with Coach Few, and that was an easy one. He was happy for me. Yeah, all right, that's it, see you later. When I sat down with Coach Lisa, there was a lot of tears because she was a grad assistant here when I was a strength coach. And so we built a bond just as colleagues and friends when we're in our 20s. And so now to go full circle and see what she's done with the program, I knew that was going to be the hardest conversation to sit down with her, just because we've been through the battles. And one of the toughest battles was seeing what she did with cancer. And the way that she showed up every day for the athletes, I mean, it's so inspiring. I mean, it's really hard for us to ever feel sorry for ourselves or to question, can we do it, when we have an example of Lisa just being able to just show up for the team. And she show up without a hat on and no hair and low energy because she's finishing up her radiation, but she just gave what she could give. And so that's one of the biggest lessons I'm leaving Gonzaga with is, man, she showed me that this is possible. And so when I hit adversity in my life, I just hope that I can handle it the way that she did.
And with both of you being exceptional leaders, and you alluded to earlier how you still want to come back and do leadership talks, and then you've also in your time here have brought in a leadership program of sorts. Why do you believe it's important for athletes and young people in general to understand the value of leadership and how them as a person can be a leader?
Well, I really believe leadership is the most important skill in sport. And a lot of coaches will say, oh no, it's shooting or it's offense or it's defense. And for sure, those things are really important in the game of basketball. But really, especially at our level, every single team you play against has great shooters, great defenders, great offensive players. And so that's not the difference maker. The difference maker is how well those individual parts can work together. And I pitched that to the coaching staff maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago and said, hey, what do you think about really not just having quotes, not just having a plan, but what if we had a system for building leaders? And to Lisa's credit, she was all in. And so what started out as one of my ideas became something that the whole staff embraced. And the reason why I think it's so important is because you look and you see, man, the greatest teams win championships, not the greatest players. And so our success is in part not just because we have great talented athletes that are well-fueled and they know how to shoot, dribble, pass, but it's the connection that they make. And not only does it equate to winning, but it equates to having a better time along the journey. And it's really not about the destination. It's about all those days in practice and the bus rides and the plane rides. And I tell you what, man, we've had so much fun because of this leadership program, because we're really talking about how do you be intentional with connections. So, you know, what's funny is everyone wants that, yet most people aren't teaching it. You know, most people say, man, you gotta be a better leader. And then I would ask, well, can you define what being a good leader is? And man, it's a really tough question. But here we make it really simple. Leadership is influence. So the more influence you have, the better leader you are. The better leader you are, the better influence, or the more influence you have. And I think that's really important because we tell the athletes, you don't have the tool of force, right? Now coaches, we have this tool of force. We can say, you didn't make the right play, you're sitting, or you're being cut from the team. But as a player, the only thing you can do is really provide influence. If you have a connection with someone, if you put in the work, then you have the ability to be able to come alongside them and help them out. So yeah, I'm just super proud that I work for a staff that value that much. And I think the proof's in the pudding. And so I would really encourage anyone that really wants to be able to see what Gonzaga's done in the win column to kind of look under the hood and see what they're doing with the behavioral science side of things, the mental performance side of things, the connection. I mean, we really do consider Gonzaga basketball to be Gonzaga family.
And dipping into that, both the life in general and the game of basketball bring inevitable adversity that tests an athlete's mental and emotional resilience. How important is it to address those aspects of performance and recovery, and how do you integrate the mindset and managing that into what you did within strength and conditioning?
Well, they're all just skills. You know, bench press is a skill, and being a linear thinker it's really nice to say, well, let's find out where they're at. You know, we don't say, our standard here is you bench press 300 pounds and we bring in the walk-on redshirt freshman and crush them with the weight. We would never do that. We'd bring you in and say, hey, this is a really important value that we have and we're gonna work on it every day. But first we have to find out where you're at. And you might be a bench pressing 100 pounds. So we put 100 pounds in the bar and next week we go to 105 and 110. It's a logical progression. And so when you think about things like resiliency, grit, growth mindset, well, first you have to define where they are and be able to say, this is how we define grit or growth mindset or resilience at Gonzaga. Now we measure, this is where you're at, and we have this logical progression and we work on it every day. And coaches already inherently know how to do this. You know, you never say, this is how we run our offense, show them one day and never practice it again. You know, you show this is the play we're gonna run. You run that play day after day, month after month. You run it against a zone, you run it against man, you run it against people up the line, on the line that are switching. We do all the different scenarios. And so we'll do that with basketball skills. And I think what Coach Lisa and the staff has done a good job here of doing is saying, now, what about these mental performance skills? How do we not just talk about them once, but how do we give the athletes the tools to practice them and then put them in different scenarios where those tools are stressed? And I think that's gonna be the key, is just like teaching any other skill. I love guitar, like we talked about. How do you teach guitar? You don't tell athletes, this is a C chord and this is a G chord. Okay, you're good now. You just practice it over and over, and you practice transitions from different places on the neck, and your fingers feeling coordinated and they hurt. You just battle through those difficult times, and pretty soon you can play while having a conversation in front of thousands of people. And I think that's what we want to do for our athletes, is we want to be able to create those scenarios in practice. So when they hit adversity on the court, or really life after basketball, out in the real world, when you're a working guy like me, how do you still take all of those life skills that you learned and apply them?
And you've worked with this incredible staff as well as a lot of talented athletes through the years. What do you think has been the key to building trust and strong relationships with those players and your colleagues in a one-on-one sense?
Well, just like we talked about JP Batista and we see his heart, I think that's where it all starts. I think all of us have this internal knowing of, we meet someone and say, you know, do they have my best interest in mind? And I think that's been the foundation, is you walk in and Coach Lisa really puts the athletes first. Before the wins, before the championships, she looks at each person as an individual and as a human being. And I think that's where it all starts. And then I think the other part is just, it takes time. And so, you know, you bring someone in on a recruiting visit and you tell them, hey, we have this 18-week leadership program. We really believe in culture. We want to take care of you. But they're probably going to other schools that are doing the same thing. And all I can tell athletes and their parents is that the proof's in the pudding. I was there for 30 years as a student athlete. You know, our athletic director, Chris Staniford, you know, he was low person on the totem pole when I first came through. I mean, he's just worked his way up. Shannon Straw, all of these people have been here since the 90s and early 2000s. And the reason why we stay is not because we have these big salaries. We stay because of the culture and because the way people treat you here. And I always tell people I'm a really good recruiter, because when I moved over here, I always thought I moved back to Seattle. That's where my family's from. But after being here for a couple of years, you see how special Gonzaga and Spokane is. And so I moved over my 3 brothers, then I moved over my older sister, then I moved over my parents, and both sets of grandparents. And they all moved here to the Spokane Coeur d'Alene area. And so I think, you know, when people come through and you say, how do you build trust? And they look around and say, wow, you've been here for 30 years, you've been here for 20 years. I think it's easy to see how special it is.
And the way you talk about it, Gonzaga obviously has been a significant part of your playing and coaching journey. When you reflect on your time here, how meaningful has this place been for you, for your family, and for the community that you built here?
You're not going to get me to cry. I'm a crier. It's been everything. I mean, I came over here as a walk-on redshirt freshman back in 1995. I didn't know anyone. And I walked into the first meeting, I was really nervous, and a guy put his hand on my shoulder, and it was Mike Roth, the athletic director, and said, hey, we got you. And from day one, I just felt taken care of. There was a lot of ups and downs. There was days I called my parents, I don't know if I can cut it. I think I'm done with basketball. I mean, it was so difficult. And during those times, it was not only my family, but I had my teammates came alongside me and lifted me up. I met my wife here. I mean, she was 18 years old, and it's so cool to look back and tell our kids about the stories. And I mean, Gonzaga, without Gonzaga, I wouldn't have my kids. And so they just love it. It's so cool to be able to still be part of the program. You know, a lot of my teammates don't have the same luxury that I have. They graduate and they might move to other cities. And for me to still be in the weight room and to be able to actually be in the arena when the athletes are playing and be able to have those small little conversations about, hey, where are you from? What are you doing now? It just keeps you tied. And I just think, man, you cannot grow tall and strong without roots. And Gonzaga is my roots. And so I just love being close to home. And I'm just excited for my kids, hopefully one day, to be able to come through here and be able to experience what I experienced.
Well, Mike, I appreciate your time for this interview, and myself and I'm sure all Zag fans are excited for this next chapter of your life.
Thank you so much.